that. And there's our members. So welcome everybody to our October Klamath Film meeting. We are inside rather than on the patio like we thought that we would be. Apologies for that. That means we're going to have some background noise. We're just going to have to fight through, unfortunately. So I'm Kurt Lidke. I'm the executive director of Klamath Film. Oh, hey, David. We wrapped up our film festival 10 days ago, so I'll talk a little bit about that, but we always start off our meeting with introductions. We are going to be joined by a special guest tonight, like we usually are each month. Tonight it's going to be Max Siemers, who is a film producer in Hollywood. He has produced around 20 films and 1 TV show. He's worked with Paramount Pictures, with Ace Entertainment, the CW, Spyglass Entertainment, Awesomeness TV, a whole bunch of different places. He's done a bunch of movies for Netflix and as well as theatrical release. He has a new movie that's coming out later this month called Spontaneous, so I'm sure he'll want to plug that. But he's a good guy. I've known him since he was in college, and he went to the University of Oregon before moving to Hollywood, so he's done well. So first of all, hello, welcome. Thank you for joining us. I'm Kurt Lidke. I'm the executive director. I've been in this role since January. And I am also a filmmaker and a commercial drone pilot as well. And in addition to running this organization, I'm also a journalist and editor for the Herald and News. So, David, you want to introduce yourself?
I am David Paoli, and I get back at the meetings. I'm kind of rare at the meetings. I have done a couple of films, one of which I showed here maybe last year. We had a lead based, and so filming is not my main gig, so I haven't been super active. And with COVID lately, I have been, what should I say, not super creative the last several months. But I'm looking to sort of make another short film on my own, and perhaps another larger film a little bit later on.
Quick check. Mary Jane, Lindsay, Court, Lori, did anyone hear Dave talking just now?
Negative this last week, so.
Yeah, could hear him.
Okay, just checking if my mic volumes are good. Thank you. David, do you want to introduce yourself?
Water. Thank you.
I am David Reed, member of the Klamath Film, been there for many years. Filmmaker, prop maker, costume maker, photographer. That's about it.
Okay. Lori, why don't you introduce yourself?
Sure, I'm Lori. I've been a Klamath Film member for a couple of years. I was on the Klamath Board of Directors for 2 years. Recently, I had a short film that was selected into KIF. So you can see some interviews of me or potentially saw my short film. And I do a lot of volunteering with Klamath Film, as well as when the Ross Raglan is doing performances and stuff. I also do backstage and some tech work there as well.
Yep. Lori had a film called The Puzzle. It was a stop motion film, one of 2 stop motion films that we had for this year's film festival. And she was also the only Klamath Film active member that had a film at our film festival. Mary Jane, would you like to introduce yourself, please?
Yeah, I do. I'm Mary Jane Hillier, and we've lived in Klamath Falls for 10 years and love it. And I am presently at home, like a lot of people are. I've worked in the schools as a volunteer with special need kids. I enjoy film and joined the group because I want to learn more. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Mary Jane. And Mary Jane was part of our August film camp that we ran for a week. One of our participants in that. Lindsay, why don't you introduce yourself?
Yeah, I'm Lindsay Silver. I've been in Klamath Falls for about 2 years now, and I was introduced to Klamath Film through a class at Oregon Tech last term. It was through, or was it last term, or was it winter term? It was a grant writing course, and that's how I was introduced, and became a board member in May or June. I've kind of lost track of time, I guess. So yeah, so that is me. I'm a student at Oregon Tech, mostly home, homeschooling and schooling myself. So
Thank you. Oh, hey, there's our guest. Hey, Max, we will get to you in just a minute here, okay? So sit tight. Court, why don't you introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Court Canick. I used to be a scientific and technical filmmaker. I've been on the board now since March, and that's about all there is.
Okay. If you'd like to introduce yourself, please.
I'm Penny Peterson and new to the area. I live in Chiloquin, and my husband and I have done some really small projects, and he's an actor and a director and writer and a pastor.
Okay.
And so we have a lot of interesting creative endeavors.
Fantastic. Curtis, while you're moving up, you want to introduce yourself, please?
My name's Curtis Peoples, and I'm the current chair of Klamath Film. And I am a musician and a music archivist. I get paid to collect music. So basically, I'm a professional kind of pack rat. My wife would call me a hoarder, but I get paid to do it. So it's a nice thing to go out in people's garages and collect music and stuff and instruments. So I'm really happy being in Klamath Falls, originally from Texas. I'm back and forth between the two. And we'll be looking to retire here and work at Oregon Tech a little bit. I'm teaching there also. And I work for the major university back in Texas. So I can do it.
Perfect. A couple people just walked in. If you'd like to introduce yourselves.
Art Belsky.
Amelia Belsky.
Okay. Welcome. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. And hello, Max. So we'll get to you in just a minute. Just one or two things I need to go through first. But Max is our special guest tonight, and with all of our meetings every month, we bring in someone from the professional film industry, from different arenas, and just have an open dialogue conversation with them about the industry, how things work, any interactions. We have a very eclectic group, Max. It runs from professional filmmakers and music composers for film, down to students who just want to make their Instagram look cooler. So a very wide group. Hello, sir. Yeah, come on in. This is for Klamath Film. So we wrapped up the 8th annual Klamath Independent Film Festival about 11 days ago. We do have a couple leftover posters, stickers, and programs are right there if anyone in-house wants to grab them. It was the first time that we've done our festival on a hybrid level, meaning that we were still in-house, and actually we were the only film festival in the entire country that could hold an in-house film festival. Everyone else has either canceled, gone exclusively virtual, or they did a temporary drive-in for their film festival, or a combination thereof. The Ross Raglan Theater is still able to function with a capacity of 100 people, so we were able to run that limited capacity, and we also presented the festival online. So all of our films were set on demand. The structure of our festival is that we exclusively take Made in Oregon films. We are the Made in Oregon Film Fest. I was going to show some videos associated with it, as well as an intro from Max, but my Ecamm Live is not working right now, so unfortunately I can't share stuff there. We did something really cool with our awards this year, which was we partnered with the Southern Cascade Woodcrafters Guild to have hand-carved custom trophies made. Now that's not totally unique, but what was unique was that they made trophies specific to each of our winning films. So across our 5 categories, each award was its own unique art piece.
Really?
That was catered to a character within the film or something that related to the film. The filmmakers loved it, the audience loved it, so it's definitely something that we're going to try to continue into next year. We had pretty good turnout. We had a great turnout online. We had over 1,000 participants with our film festival online, which was particularly good because being the film liaison office for Klamath County, it's our job to also help productions come to the area, help promote the area for films, and help with any permits, local cast and crew, anything that may come up in the course of a production. It was an incredible opportunity for us to market the Klamath base. And so we ran pre-rolls with all of our films for our online followers about local tourism as well as filming in Klamath County. So that I thought turned out really well. Obviously, turnout in-house was down from past years out of necessity because the 740-seat theater could only house 100 people. But I personally thought it went pretty well. We were also able to do with our Q&As, we were able to live stream everything that we did on stage. So anyone who bought an online pass could participate with everything that we were doing on stage. They could watch with the live stream. And we included every filmmaker that wasn't able to attend in person. We set up a GoToMeeting just like this, and we projected them onto the big screen. So that we had at times a hybrid Q&A going on where we had some filmmakers on stage and some on the big screen, and everyone was able to hear each other and interact, and it was all going out via live stream. Earlier today, I was the featured speaker at IDA, which is a international documentary filmmaking convention, about how we did that from a technical aspect. A lot of people were interested in how we were able to pull that off, to be able to present the festival both in person and live streaming, and incorporate all of our filmmakers, whether they were in-house or whether they were checking in from home. So we got a lot of eyeballs on Klamath Film Festival, which is good. One of our films we could not show, and that's because the filmmaker's in the process of signing a distribution deal for it. We had 7 world premieres at our film fest, which was awesome, but it should have been 8. There's a film called Frank and Zed that's an all puppet film. Took 6 years to make, entirely funded by Kickstarter. Really insane film. Picture like Mel Brooks's Young Frankenstein, but done in the style of Jim Henson's The Dark Crystal. Like zany, over-the-top comedy, ridiculous violence, and all puppets. And it's great homage, like the 30s and 40s Universal horror films. So I talked to the filmmaker earlier today, and we are trying to pinpoint an exact date, but we will have a special screening of Frank and Zed probably within the next 2 months here in Klamath Falls. He's going to come down from Portland, bring a bunch of puppets with him. So we'll do a screen at the Ross Ragland Theater. We just need to specify a date. I'll let people know as soon as that comes up.
Limited to 100 people.
Limited to 100 people in-house, yes. Unless the governor announces a new change to that, we're still limited to 100 people at the Ross Ragland. But
That's
minus the staff and minus volunteers, and so really it's like 80. But it's an incredible film. It's making its world premiere in a week at a major film fest, and I really hope that this film goes national because it's absolutely incredible. And it's made in Oregon, which makes it even better. So unless people have questions about the film festival, I was going to showcase our awards and whatnot, but since my eCam isn't working, I can't really share screen right now to show. I mean, I could show everyone in-house what they look like, which is pretty amazing. Let me see if I can just pull this up.
Running off their Wi-Fi or
we're running on a hotspot right now. So let me see if I can share screen. Bear with me. Okay, so what I can do is bring up that as an example. I know Max and people on the video probably can't see it, but since all of our awards were custom made, this was for our K through 12 student category. A 6-year-old in Ashland made a stop motion film called The Sandcastle. And so the woodcrafters spent about a month and a half building custom trophies. This actually opens up like a jewelry box inside. So that was our award for her. The filmmakers just loved this concept. Our stop motion film about modern teen witches. And so that's for the Spooky Girls. And the gentleman who did walk into the room received this one for his documentary Illegal. Hello, Nick. Okay. Congratulations, Nick, on winning Best Feature Film. We were just talking about Klamath Independent Film Festival. So this is the award that they built for him. So it's kind of cool how each individual award was custom designed for all of our filmmakers. Nick, since you just walked in, you want to introduce yourself real quick?
Sure. Well, hi everyone. My name is Nick Alexander. Like Kurt said, I just participated in the film festival with my documentary film, Illegal. I actually just moved to Klamath Falls about a month ago as my wife.
I have an extra one of these for you.
Oh, awesome. Thank you. Yeah, so I just moved here about a month ago. My wife is studying at OIT, so I connected with Kurt. Actually, it was during our virtual Q&A. He mentioned the Klamath Film, and so I was a part of the Southern Oregon group over in Ashland previously, and wanted to get connected as I'm a filmmaker, and definitely want to network with you guys and see how we can work together.
Fantastic. Well, again, apologies for everyone who's crammed in here. We were supposed to be on the patio, but they actually double booked that with a musician, so we're stuck inside. Let's get to our special guests, Max Siemers. I had a video, and of course I can't show it because my Ecamm isn't working. But Max, have you ever had a demo reel made for you before?
Never. I'm behind the scenes. I'm behind the camera. No one makes it done for me.
So Max I've known since he was in college. He is a University of Oregon grad. And then he moved to Hollywood. He interned with Paramount and Spyglass, right?
Yeah, I interned at the CW, at Spyglass Entertainment, and then at Paramount. And then right after I graduated from Oregon, I landed a job at Lionsgate, which ended up in a promotion. And that was my first executive gig, working as a creative executive at Lionsgate.
Perfect. So Max is now a producer of films. He has about 20 films to his credit, according to IMDb. He's done a bunch of films for Netflix and a few that have also garnered theatrical release. Probably his best known, I'd say, is maybe the To All the Girls or to All the Boys That I've Loved Before series on Netflix. It's probably been your most successful run, right?
Yeah. To All the Boys I Loved Before was a movie we independently financed and then sold to Netflix after the fact for distribution. And it became a breakout hit for them. It's still their most watched film in their history. And then they ordered 2 sequels, which we shot back to back last year, the first of which came out Valentine's Day this year, which feels like 20 years ago at this point. And then the third movie comes out next year, same day, Valentine's Day.
Perfect. So Max has worked a lot in, but before we delve into questions, and for those who are joining us for the first time, the way we structure these is very open dialogue, just AMA style. So if anyone has a question to ask Max, here's your opportunity to interact with a Hollywood film producer. But Max, why don't you start off by just kind of explaining how you got into, you talk about how you start off as an intern, but then getting into the industry, because we've all kind of paid our dues. I know you definitely put in time doing all sorts of odd jobs to get to the point of becoming a producer. So can you kind of explain your timeline and how you got to where you are now?
Yeah, I got to Oregon. I wanted to be a duck since I was about 8 years old. My older sister, even though I grew up in the Bay Area down in San Francisco, my older sister went to Oregon, and I'd visited her when I was really young and fell in love with the place. So I wanted to go there for almost no other reason than just personal affiliation. And I wasn't really thinking about my future. And then once I got there, I loved the school, but I realized I wanted to do film, and Oregon at the time didn't have a film school. They had a film minor through the English Studies program, but they didn't have a major. And so my only way in, I realized, was to do internships every summer. So after my freshman year, I did my first internship down at the CW, followed that up the next summer with an internship at Spyglass Entertainment, and the next summer at Paramount. And once I graduated, I had made enough connections through those internships that there was an opening at Lionsgate for an assistant position with the senior vice president of production. I landed that job, and then I was an assistant there for about 2.5 years, paying my dues, as you said, doing a lot of things that probably, would get a lot of executives sued today. I think I was of the last generation where they'd make us do things that probably aren't very great, So now I see this generation of assistants, and they have it easy.
Oh, yeah, so I had chairs thrown in my head in the music industry. So yeah.
Yeah. No,
And I think for a while you were a driver too, right?
what was that?
You were a driver for a while too, weren't you?
No.
Well, I remember you talking about how you were having to like drive some different people, like some different stars around Hollywood, and that was like your gig for a bit, wasn't it?
So what the only driving I ever really had to do as an assistant was my boss was one of the lead executives at Lionsgate on the Hunger Games, and when we were looking for directors for that project, he tasked me with taking the scripts and hand delivering them all around town to the handful of directors that we were considering for the project. So I went all the way to Malibu to drop off one script, and then I would have to drive about 2 hours all the way to Los Feliz to drop off another. So it was just a job as an assistant where you had to drive. I mean, they made me fly to Australia once to deliver a cut of a movie to Russell Crowe for 2 days and then fly me back. So there was all sorts of weird little jobs like that you had to do.
Okay, so from becoming an assistant, how did you end up in a role of a film producer?
So the industry is very much a place where if you're an assistant, you're getting paid to be an assistant. And if you want to get a promotion, it's not about paying your dues and just, biding your time and eventually you get promoted and move up the ladder. It's about what added value you can bring to those you work for. And so ultimately as an assistant, the best thing I could do to prove my value to potentially become an executive was to bring in material before executives work. So I was working my connections around town as an assistant, meeting with assistants for other studio executives, for producers, for agents. And it was sort of a barter system. I would give them information and intel as to what was going on within our studio for their boss, and they would slip me a script that was going to go out the next week that everyone was going to want. And in doing so, I brought a handful of projects to Lionsgate that were of value that ended up getting made. And ultimately, that showed my value that I could be an executive. Because there's a number of different types of executives in town, people who are good at production, people who are good at development, people who are good at bringing in material and connections. And I was the latter, which really is sort of the most valuable to executives and producers around town. It's the hardest thing to do, is make those connections, hold those relationships, and continue to bring in material. So that's how I got promoted, and we were there for about 2.5 years. We made 3 horror movies and then a couple of comedies. We made this one with Paul Rudd and Amy Poehler called They Came Together, that premiered at Sundance. And then we left. There was a merger within Lionsgate. Summit and Lionsgate merged, and there was new leadership. We decided to, myself and 2 others decided to leave and start a company called Chapter One Films, production company. And we partnered with Blumhouse. And we ended up making 8 movies in 2 years with Blumhouse, which was a whole different experience in and of itself.
And now you're with, is it Awesomeness TV that you're a part of, or?
No, that was the next step after Blumhouse. So after 2 years of Blumhouse, working on a number of horror films in the $5 million range, Jeffrey Katzenberg called us, Matt Kaplan, who I work with, and myself, because he had bought a company called Awesomeness TV, which at the time was just sort of a digital content company. And when he had called us, this was right as Netflix was getting started. I think House of Cards had just come out. And so the digital landscape, the streaming space wasn't real yet. And I don't think a lot of people in Hollywood really bought it yet. And even we at the time turned our noses to this guy a little bit when we were being asked to go over there and produce movies for this company. It felt like doing straight to DVD type content. It didn't feel real. But then we sat down with them and heard their vision for the future, and we really bought into it. And we made 7 films in 2 years there, including Before I Fall, which is a wide theatrical release. We made, I think, think we made 4 movies with Netflix while we were there, or 3 movies with Netflix while we were there, including 2 All the Boys I Loved Before. And then Awesomeness TV got bought out by Comcast. And so we ended up leaving again, not wanting to be folded into the Comcast system, starting a new production company called Ace Entertainment, which is where I currently run the film division for now. And we signed a first look deal with Paramount Pictures. We've been with them for the last 3 years. And then as of this year, on top of that, we recently raised about $75 million to finance our own features. So we're going to make about 10 movies over the next 2 years for a budget of about $7.5 million a clip. And so I just got back in town today because I was in pre-production up in Vancouver for the past couple of weeks on a movie that starts shooting next week. And then I leave in a week and a half for London to start shooting another movie. So both of those are around the $7.5 million range.
Fantastic. Max has a new movie coming out called Spontaneous. And it actually stars Charlie Plummer, who those who have been with us for a couple of years will remember. His first major film was a movie called Lean on Pete that was shot here in Oregon. And for our 2018 film festival, that was our feature film that we ran on Friday night, was Lean on Pete. So his newest film was now produced by Max. You want to describe what Spontaneous is about, Max?
Yeah. So it's because it's a movie we shot a couple years ago that's had a lot of trouble with distribution because of the subject matter. Ultimately, the movie is a very irreverent film about a small town in the Pacific Northwest where a teenage girl spontaneously combusts in her classroom. And we're talking very, very bloody, just pops like a balloon in the middle of class. And it happens again the next day to another senior in her class. And so the FBI comes in and quarantines the entire town. And the movie isn't about trying to solve the mystery as to what's happening to them. Ultimately, it's not really the center of the film. What the film's really about is how do you live your life as the world is kind of burning around you. And our director and writer, he had read this novel that it's based on, and I think he really related to it from I think what he felt he was going through in our country over the past 4 years. And now all of a sudden with the coronavirus, it couldn't be more relevant. But we had a lot of trouble with distribution on this one because Paramount and a number of other companies that were interested for a while got really nervous about marketing a film where there were kids running around a high school bloody. They basically were afraid that it was going to look like a school shooting movie, which it's not. And so it's part of the politics of this industry that you have to deal with, those sort of perceptions and dealing with the potential PR that bad publicity you might have in that sort of a film. But it's coming out this week, and I just looked at it. I actually hadn't looked at it, and it looks like we've got 100% on Rotten Tomatoes, which is amazing.
Congrats.
Yeah.
So Curtis, question for you, Max.
So Max,
Yeah.
you were just talking about in production and COVID. So me coming from a music side, I've got a lot of friends who are out. Yeah.
Hello?
So a lot of people use it closing down for shooting movies these days. Are a lot of people out of work? How are you getting around this?
Hey guys, I'm sorry. All of that cut out. I heard none of that.
Oh,
It might just be my Wi-Fi. I can't tell. But
check.
Nope, it cut out here for me too.
It's not. It's us. No, it's us. We're having a slow network connection issue. So are you hearing us? Okay. Yes.
I can hear you now. Yeah, I can hear you now.
Check. Okay.
Yeah.
So the question was how are you filming right now with all of the COVID restrictions in place?
It's really difficult. Vancouver and London have very different regulations, if I'm being honest. Vancouver and the Canadian Film Commission are amazing. They're incredibly protective of their crews and the actors and really their public. London and England in general has been a lot looser. Luckily, we are very protective, and we're leaning on what we've learned from the Vancouver production to build in better safety requirements in London. But there's a number of things we're doing. First and foremost, we have testing every day. Every other day, and we have results within, I think, 2 hours of those tests. There's a couple of different companies in Vancouver that offer their services, and they have varying results. Ultimately, we ended up being lucky enough to get this one company that's the fastest turnaround, and they only have enough manpower to really have, I think, 6 productions, and luckily 2 of those are our productions. We have a TV show shooting in Vancouver at the same time right now, Are You Afraid of the Dark Season 2, and then our movie. But aside from the testing,
No, it's our Wi-Fi in-house is kind of bad. Everyone who's on the call can still hear them, but ours may cut in and out because I'm using a hotspot. Just bear with us.
Were you,
Check.
anyways,
Yeah.
I can hear
Yes,
you guys.
no, on sound. Sorry, we're having to use a mobile hotspot, so we may cut out from time to time here in house, so just bear with us. Feel free to keep talking. Lori, Lindsay, Court, and Mary Jane, who are on the call, can still hear you just fine, and we'll catch up as soon as our internet kicks back in. So just FYI, if we start to cut out, it's because of our hotspot is bad.
Yeah, you guys seem fine.
Does anyone have a question, either in-house or online, for Max? So we want to open this up and give you an opportunity to talk to a producer of films. Yeah, sure. Oh, and actually, hang on. That sheet that's in front of you, Dave, if we could pass that around, everyone could sign in, please, that would be great. Thank you.
Hey,
so
Kurt,
I'm kind of curious where technology is going, and what levels of video editing programs are, whether it's Final Cut Pro. I'm not sure. Be interesting to find out kind of like the larger studios, what kind of programs they're using for editing. But like an example, with the recent Lion King, they really used virtual reality in a different way for filming that's brand new. I've watched for years, and I watched behind the scenes and how these and using computers, but I was like, haven't seen anything new for a while till the filming of the Lion King, and they made a virtual world and did the camera work completely different.
They're doing the same thing with the Mandalorian series that's coming out at the end of this month. John Favreau did the exact same thing as with the Lion King. But yeah, they're kind of the big three of DaVinci Resolve, Adobe Premiere, and Final Cut. But Max, are your editors using something beyond those main three?
Every editor I've ever worked with has worked on an Avid system.
And we may cut out from time to time.
Yeah, are you guys not hearing me?
You can get good Wi-Fi and have a good meeting. So, hold on one thing.
Okay.
I can hear you guys.
Max, we completely missed your entire answer there. Our internet started to cut out again, but at least.
Hold on one thing.
Kurt, can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Reload or something?
No.
Email pillows. Do you need more drink? I do too.
Hey, Max, this is Court. Can you tell me who's distributing Spontaneous?
Paramount. Paramount's distributing it through their home entertainment platforms. It's going to be on, Google Play. You can buy it for rent on Amazon, on Vudu, basically any SVOD service. It's going to be in a limited number of theaters this weekend for drive-in.
I have a question, Max. So outside of COVID times, how is filming or doing productions in London or I think you said Toronto comparatively to the United States? Well, what are some pros or benefits or funny stories you've had in between them?
I think every country sort of has their own personality in the way that they handle their business. I love working in Canada, but a lot of their crew can be passive aggressive. It's which is fine. But it's something that we know and deal with. I think in the US, people seem to be a lot more, you know what, I'm just going to go take care of this problem now, and which I appreciate. And what I've found, London's sort of the best of both worlds. They just sort of have this keep calm and carry on approach, where if there's an issue, they're like, no problem, we got it, don't worry about it. And, they always seem to handle it. So frankly, I haven't had any real issues working in any of them. I've made more movies in Canada than anywhere. But it just depends on your crew. It's a crew to crew basis. There's great crews in Vancouver and there's less great crews in Vancouver. And I don't know if anyone, can they hear me on the other side? I can't tell.
I'm not sure. They're sort of frozen. This is being recorded, and so the recording is going to be fine. So anybody can rewatch, and hear some of the answers that you gave, even if they cut out.
I just want to go back to the COVID thing, because it was a good question.
Yeah.
The other things that we're basically doing with COVID are, we have a wristband system to stay within pods. So effectively, anyone in the lighting department will be in the same pod. Anyone in the grip department will be in the same pod. Producers, the producers and the directors, same pod. And what that allows us to do while we're waiting, while things are getting set up in between shots, is that if someone does get COVID, it really is going to only be the people within their pod that get it, and then you don't have to shut the whole production down. So I can't talk about what production, but there was a very big production that had a small up. I'm hearing feedback now. There was a very big production that had a small outbreak, and basically it was just the lighting department that got it. It was 3 people, and so
Court, who's over there, he's working right now on what's called a shoot location directory. That's going to be virtual. Sites, demographic data, permit info, everything that a location has to know. Data.
You're on mute, Lori.
Sorry, it was within a pod that they could isolate it and then continue on. They just had to hire new crew members or get new. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, they hired temporary crew for 2 weeks, and they kept shooting and they kept testing, and so they were able to isolate it within that. What gets tricky is if your lead actor get it like Robert Pattinson did on the Batman, you just have to shut down. So
The connection.
Can't do much about that.
They do theirs.
Unless you can get somebody who looks just like him.
Well, the problem with Batman is that he's wearing a mask, but it's covering all the wrong parts. So clearly he's going to get COVID.
Right. Do you think that actually there'll be film productions that are made like with masks, with COVID restrictions in place to actually go with the actual storyline?
Hold on one second. I'm gonna message Kurt.
Whoever caller 1 is, we're feeding back.
Hey, Max,
Hey, Kurt, I am on the identity phone.
Did you try to log in on?
No, well, I just logged, so.
Okay. Can you guys
You
hear
need-
me?
I can hear somebody somewhere.
Okay, good. I'm on the cafe. I've been messaging him too, so he knows that it's the Mac.
My question was just, do you think that there'll actually be films that they'll create the storyline and the scenario that actually makes sense to actually wear masks, so then they have more protection for, all the actors within the production, if COVID's actually gonna, create a sub-film genre of actual masks?
Yeah, it's actually a conversation we were having today on our film that we're preparing for London. We have a whole scene that's supposed to take place in Heathrow, and they have a couple terminals that are shut down right now that we can shoot in. But being on the grounds of Heathrow requires wearing a mask, and obviously our lead actors won't be doing that, and so it's creating a bit of a dilemma. But it's brought up the sort of question for ourselves: when is this movie supposed to take place? In theory, it's supposed to be now. Are we saying it took place in 2019? Maybe it doesn't matter, but it does present an issue, especially now that this seems to be the new normal, at least for a couple of years until things are sorted. And some productions will deal with the reality that COVID's real and will include it in our storyline, and some people won't. What I do think is that when theaters do open up and people are comfortable getting back into theaters, I and a lot of marketing executives around town feel that people aren't going to want stuff that is maybe too real, reminding them too much of the pandemic, stuff that maybe feels too dour. I think a lot of the stuff you're going to see is going to be romance and action and adventure and comedy, stuff that really gets your endorphins going. I think you'll see a lot less, awards sort of fare, at least in the theaters, because, the world kind of needs to smile.
Mm.
So
Well, with COVID, did that make the things like production insurance way more complex?
That's the most complicated thing that the entire industry has been dealing with for the past 8 months now, or 6 months, or however long it's been. The COVID insurance is a nightmare, frankly. It covers some stuff, it doesn't cover others. It's really, really tricky, but it's starting to get sorted out, and some companies are realizing they just have to take the risk and put in the right precautions where if there is an infection or two, that you can limit it and contain it and keep it from spreading. It's tricky. It's really tricky. It was when we first started, the way that it worked was anything that shut down or anything that had an LLC that was created before COVID was going to be fine. Their insurance plan was covered. COVID wasn't a part of it, so they were covered for all of that. But now insurance companies are getting a lot trickier with the language, understandably. But that really has been the biggest reason why shooting's gone back. I think a lot of people in the film industry will tell you, well, they want to protect people, and I think that's partially true. But I think it is a business, and they will try to push things through if they can. And the biggest issue is insurance.
Yeah, but doesn't that? I would assume that also plays some havoc with production budgets.
It does. It's funny. There's a number of things we're doing with COVID that affects the budgets, but it hasn't affected as much as we thought it would. We're doing French hours now. I don't know if you know what that is, but So essentially, we can't really go into overtime now if for no other reason than doctors are recommending that film crews get better sleep because your immune systems will be better and you're less likely to catch a virus. And so it's kind of that simple. So now we're shooting typical French hours, and that makes our productions a little bit longer. And so that, any added days will add some costs, but ultimately the most expensive thing in any film budget is how many locations you have. Crew moves are the most expensive things you can do on a budget of a medium to smaller scale film budget. I of course don't speak of the Marvel movies. I don't work on those. I would imagine they don't actually move a lot, frankly. A lot of it's in the studio. Well, I think we've completely lost the group.
Yeah, I guess they're having some network problems over there. They're actually at a pizza restaurant that's close to my house, so I'm kind of glad I didn't go over there and stay at home.
Yeah, I haven't gone to a restaurant in a long time.
Yeah.
We have a question here for you.
Great.
Go ahead.
Matt, go ahead. Yeah. Hey, Matt. My name's Nick. I have a question concerning crowdfunding a movie. I just finished my first feature film. The budget was about $150,000. My next film looks to be about $200,000. My question for you, as a producer, veteran producer, what advice would you have for me trying to produce a low-budget film? It's a documentary.
Man, I wish I had a better answer for you. You know, I've been fortunate enough to kind of have always gone through sort of the Hollywood system. You know, the lowest budget films I've done is probably like $3.5 million. That's probably the lowest I've done. You know, like independent financing is a tricky route. What I would say is it depends where your documentary takes place. You know, a lot of national film commissions are looking for sort of content to film that highlights their country. I know Canada pays for a lot of things during the year. Australia pays for a lot of things. I don't know what it's like in Oregon per se. I've actually unfortunately never gotten to Oregon. It's a little loud over there. But yeah, I wish I had a better answer for you. You know, I've just never really tried to raise, you know, $200,000 for a documentary. I've made a couple documentaries, but I was at Awesomeness TV at the time, and you know, we just said, you know, yes, and just did it. You know, it was just relatively easy there. You know, look, I think the one thing I can say is that you know, at least in the film industry, when someone's trying to do a documentary, what's really helpful is having representation. They can go into their independent financing division that helps put together packages and find financing for things like documentaries and low budget features and first time filmmakers that the agencies want to support. As far as doing it outside of that system, you know, I guess the thing I would say is potentially submit your first film to some managers or some agents in town to see if there's a way to maybe get some representation, particularly representation that features documentarians, and they might have some more helpful advice than I do, or potentially take you on to help you put it together.
Well, thank you for your tips. I did have one follow-up question. I mentioned that I just finished my first feature film. It was at the Klamath Film Festival this year. It's another documentary about immigration, and right now we are in discussion with different, distributors. And so, you know, it's a question that for a lot of filmmakers, it's all in our heads. How do you get your movie to Netflix? And since you have, you know, quite a bit of experience, much more than I have, I'm just curious if you have any advice on distribution. Again, it's a low budget film, but it's a very important topic.
Yeah. I mean, Max, Nick's film here was our winning award for our best feature film, and that wasn't judged by me. That was judged by 2 veteran Hollywood actors and another Hollywood producer. So he made the best film at our film fest, and I want to know how to get it out the door.
Yeah. Look, I'll sort of answer a little bit in the same way, and I apologize. I wish I was a little more helpful in this. Everything that I've ever sold for distribution has been a narrative film, or within the 2 documentaries that I've done. What I can say is I don't think the topics were as important as your film. They were specifically about social media influencers, and so those influencers had a certain level of notoriety, and the distributors of those just saw the clear path to views by how many followers they had. So my experience in finding distribution for those documentaries was relatively simple algorithm, as opposed to being merit-based. I know Netflix does a lot of their documentaries in-house. When they do acquire things, I know it actually does come through the film festival system. You know, I don't know enough about their documentary side over there. I've never done a documentary with Netflix. I've made 6 films with them, but they've all been narratives. So, I mean, you know, look, I can try to be helpful, by the way. Feel free to send it to me, and I can talk to some people at Netflix and see if there's the right person to send it to for consideration.
Well, thank you so much, Max. It really, for me, like the movie's done. We're going to film festivals. We're successful, but it's been quite the challenge to find that distributor that meets our goals, and it seems like it's an achievement. So I really appreciate it, and I'll definitely send you an email, and I'll send you a private link to the film.
I can pass your.
Okay.
I'll pass along Max.
Yeah.
If that's okay with you, Max.
What was that?
Okay, perfect. So while we're actually getting good internet in the restaurant here momentarily, does anyone in-house have a question for Max before we probably lose him again?
I have a question. How many years did it take for you to move out of those other types of jobs that you didn't really want to do in the film world to being a producer? And is your experience typical of most producers?
I think it's different for everybody. I think it really comes down. I mean, look, ultimately, this industry is very entrepreneurial. One thing I can say that was really difficult to kind of figure out on my own when I first started the industry is at that point in my life, what the public education school system basically taught me was, here's everything you need to do. If you do them right, you get a good grade and you pass your class. They tell you exactly how to achieve success. It is put in front of you. It's just about hard work. The film industry is not anything like that. It's not about just hard work. It's about instincts, it's about intuition, it's about entrepreneurial kind of spirit. It's about connections. And ultimately, it's about understanding people and understanding how to get people to do what you need them to do. A lot of this business is just managing other people's emotions, particularly the people above you. And it also, I'll admit, it's a lot of luck. The hard thing about this industry is getting a job with the right people who want to support you and help you get to that next level. You can be the most talented person in the world, but if you work for a boss who micromanages and doesn't trust anybody, you're never going to grow. I was really fortunate to work for someone who gave me enough rope to hang myself, and I messed up time and time and time and time again. And it was the only way I was able to learn how to be good at my job, without having a boss who allowed me to mess up and let me know, like, it's okay. What he taught me and what I now teach the junior executives that work with me and the assistants that work under me is that our rule at our company is you can mess up as many times as you want, just never mess up on the same thing twice. Learn from everything you've done wrong to get better in your job. And ultimately, I know some people who have been in as an assistant and not enjoyed their job, and they've been doing it for 6 or 7 years. And I was fortunate enough to only have to do it for 2.5. It's very rare to be able to move up into a position you like under 2 years. That's a really tough thing to do.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
And I should just reiterate
that because
just to clarify, it's also different for different levels of the film industry. If you want to be a director or a writer or anything creative, it's a very different journey. Being on the business side of things, whether it's in representation or producerial or as an executive in the studio, that is what I'm speaking to. As a director or a writer, or an actor, it's a very, very different process, and it's even more chaotic, frankly.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, if you can actually hear us right now, and Max, maybe you addressed this earlier when we were having issues, but David here was curious about how filming in a foreign country, specifically Vancouver, is different from filming in the U.S. right now with all the, right? Is that what you're interested? Yeah, because it's that information that you're talking about.
I can't I can't really hear the question. Maybe you type it. If you type it in the chat, maybe that would be helpful.
I think the question was, how was filming in different locations with COVID and the different countries restrictions maybe was sort of the basis of the question.
Yeah, I think the difference in shooting in different countries with COVID restrictions really comes down to the restrictions that the government gives you, frankly. Canada has been very good about protecting their people, as is the Film Commission. England and the US is a lot more loose, and but frankly, we've learned from Canada and in those US and London film productions, and we're trying to hold up the same standard that Canada does. Now I can hear them.
So I have a question while waiting for them. Has any of your productions been completely postponed due to COVID? I forget if you said that. Sorry if you already said that, but yeah.
No, we haven't talked about that. Yeah, we had a big show that was going to go for Quibi. I don't know if you know the platform. It's relatively new. Now Quibi is falling apart. So we're going to get we were 2 weeks out of shooting our show on Quibi, and then COVID happened. Quibi has completely tanked, and now we're just in the process of trying to get the rights back so we can go take it to another studio, and hopefully then get back into it. But yeah, we had a comedy series called Florida Man that we were going to shoot with Quibi, and we were really excited about it. But
what is the process of getting a movie's rights back?
It's a nightmare, frankly. Look, a lot of studios don't want to give the rights back to movies, even if they don't plan on making it, because they don't want to look stupid. So just for the quickest example off the top of my head is that Paramount had the rights to Twilight for years and never made it. And then they just let it go to Summit, and Summit made it, and Summit made billions of dollars, and Paramount looked really stupid. And so basically, in getting rights back on movies, it's very tricky if it's one studio to the other. If it's a producer, an independent financier trying to get it back from the studio, it's a little easier. They'll make us pay back the fees they've paid, and then typically a little bit of interest on top of that. And it's just a negotiation. It's just haggling. And it also depends on your relationship. If we're trying to get it back from a place that we have a good relationship with, they won't give us a hard time. If it's a place that we're not super familiar with, they will give us a hard time.
Yeah, well, question. If there's, if you had to abandon that shoot 2 weeks out, you've already done prep. You've already, spent, a fair amount of your budget. You set up departments. You've done, all of this stuff. You taking that as a loss?
Lucky for us, that was on Quibi. Quibi pays, if Quibi was the financier, they were paying for that show. They're certainly going to have to take it as a loss. What Lori was asking about, what will get tricky is in getting the rights back. Are they going to try to put in a caveat that if we sell it, if it gets set up, if it gets made somewhere else, they get their money back from the studio that is making it? And the studio that's making it's going to argue no, because we have to pay for all that prep all over again. Frankly. So the truth is, I think Quibi is just going to have to write it down as a loss. But it's also one of the reasons why this is a little tricky, and we might just not get the project back, unfortunately. Or if Quibi sells their library and their rights, which is tiny, to another studio, then in theory we could make it with them.
Wow.
I think we're back. Can everyone hear us okay? Yes? No?
Yeah,
Maybe?
yeah, a little A little bit.
No, we got our volume boosted. We got a ton of sound gear here that works great. The giant X Factor is broadband. And people express in person again that kind of as opposed to being able to do it from home. Maybe you can talk a little bit about just the role of a producer, because for people to understand, actors, do they understand what a director is? But the role of a producer, there's tiers of producers, is a little bit more colluded when you're not in the whole industry.
I'm sorry, I didn't catch any of that.
I can recap. I think the question was, could you just talk about the different positions and the roles that they actually do? Because if you're not actually involved, it can mean different things, or you just don't know the terms. So maybe just a little bit of information about what actually a production assistant does.
Sure. Again.
Yeah, just what a production assistant does, or what a producer does, or what?
Yeah, I think it's the positions you've held, what the different. Yeah.
Yeah, as a well, as an executive assistant at a studio, I mean, my job was rolling phone calls, scheduling, managing the minutia of my boss's personal life, whether that was like making sure their dog was getting their groom, or picking up their tuxedo for the Oscars. It was, it's all of that. And at the same time, it's also reading a ton of scripts and providing my thoughts and coverage on those scripts. It's putting together some notes documents on things that probably aren't as important, because as an assistant, they're not going to give me the important notes documents. They'll give that to one of the executives. And then also they're expecting me to do my own homework and come to them and say, hey, I saw this tiny little indie film. You got to know this director. Like, you guys don't know him? Go meet this person. So, what they expect of you is not that hard. What you have to do to get their attention is a little bit more difficult. So that was at a studio. When you're becoming a producer's assistant, it's a little bit different, because their life is a little more on the road. So it's a lot of the similar things, but then you're also dealing with their day-to-day life and making sure they're prepared every day on set, with what the sides are for the next day, if there's going to be changes to the blocking of a scene for the next day that they don't know about. It's just making sure they're on top of everything, which means that I have to be on top. When I was an assistant to a producer, I would have to be on top of, the other assistants that are on set, the director's assistants, the first AD, the second AD, and making sure that I knew everything to prepare my boss for that. And now that's what my assistant does for me. Granted, I'm a little bit more self-sufficient than the past generation. I think the generation that came before me was very, very dependent on assistants. And I find it very awkward and would never ask my assistant to pick up dry cleaning or anything of that sort. And I think that's the way the industry has actually shifted. Kind of my age group and younger just doesn't think the same way. But if you get about 3, 4, 5 years older, that generation still sort of lives in an industry that doesn't really exist anymore. Like I grew up in an industry that had we printed scripts. And you would write on the spine of the script the title and the date of the draft. And then you'd put it we had a closet that had every single draft. That doesn't exist anymore. Now it's all digital. But, when I was coming up, everything was hand printed. You'd write on it. You'd have to bind it yourself. You'd stand around that copy machine for hours. It was exhausting. And then you'd take a giant stack of scripts to your boss's house at the end of the night and say, hey, you got to read these tonight. And now I just have a Kindle. It's great.
Right. Would somebody actually be like, we need to go back to draft this number, and then go and pull out that draft when it?
Yeah. No, I mean, we would have the drafts on file, but I think a lot of executives, and still older executives still like this, they like the weight of a script. They like to turn the pages and write in it with a marker. They like to have it in hand. It's harder to do notes on your iPad for them. So, yeah, that was definitely a thing.
I'm good, thank you though.
Wow.
So we're trying. I think we have audio back here and internet.
Yeah.
Okay, good. Apologies for this, Max. It's certainly not intended. So can you talk a little bit about some of your upcoming productions? I know you talked about Spontaneous, but there's some other films that are also listed on your IMDb that are either in post-production or pre-production right now.
Yeah, I mean, you know, we're in post-production on To All the Boys That Love Before 3. That was probably the biggest of the 3 movies. We shot that in Vancouver, New York, and Korea. So that was a very different experience. We have 2 movies in pre-production right now. One shoots next week in Vancouver. The press release has come out for that one. It's called Hello, Goodbye, and Everything in Between. It's sort of a modern American graffiti, if you will, which when I try to explain that to my 16-year-old sister, she has no idea what I'm talking about. Yeah, it's about a couple in high school who on the last day of summer about to go to college, and they really haven't had the talk of, are they going to stay together or are they going to break up amicably? One of them is leaning one way, the other is leaning the other, and the night ensues. The other movie we're in prep on right now in London is called The Statistical Probability of Love at First Sight, based on a best-selling novel. It's about an American, like a 22-year-old American girl and a 23 or 24-year-old British boy who are flying from JFK to Heathrow and fall in love on the plane ride over, but lose each other at customs. And they're both going there for very specific reasons that are a little bit difficult for them to deal with. And so we follow them on their journeys, and then eventually, hopefully, they will meet each other again. The movie's themes are really about fate versus choice. And that was previously written by Dustin Lance Black. He was going to direct it. That sort of fell apart a while back. And now we've got a new director, a new writer, and we're locking in cast right now. So, yeah. And then we've had a movie come out recently during COVID through Paramount called Body Cam with Mary J. Blige. And that was it's a horror movie. It's a lot different than some of the other ones that I was just describing, but it's a horror movie in which Mary J. Blige plays a police detective who is looking into the murders of a few officers within her department, and she realizes that it is coming from a paranormal spirit. And I won't really give away the rest there, but yeah, it sort of deals with the race relations that we're kind of experiencing right now between the police and the African American community. So it's a horror movie that leans into that dynamic.
How are they releasing it? Is it just straight to video? Is it streaming? Is it in theaters?
Max, the question is, how are you distributing right now with so many theaters shut down?
Yeah, it's been really tough. I mean, if it's a gigantic production they pumped a ton of money into, they're going to hold off until the theaters are open. For Body Cam and for Spontaneous and for a lot of other people that have made these movies that were under 15, they're doing limited releases and drive-throughs in theaters across the country, like 25 screens. The way that distribution works for them is that if they release a movie on a certain number of screens, it triggers a number in their output deal that earns them a certain amount of money back through their international outputs. So yeah, I think it's like 10 to 25 screens around the country, and then everything else is on SVOD. You could get it on, Google Play or YouTube, on Prime,
Oh, I got it. Okay, that's me.
Hey, Kurt, I've got to get running, but I'm happy to come back and do this another night when maybe the internet's a little bit better. I know tonight's been a little tricky. Can you hear me?
I think he dropped off.
Yeah, we can let them know, Max, if you need to be going. It's been a pleasure and a delight to talk to you and let
Yeah,
Chris
you
know.
guys,
Yeah.
as well. Thank you. Yeah, no, look, I'm happy to come back for another session on a night that I'm sure the Wi-Fi will be a little bit better.
Yeah.
But for tonight, I gotta get running. I was up at 3 a.m. doing a Zoom to London, so I'm running on fumes here. But thank but thank you guys, and yeah, look forward to talking again.
Yeah,
Thank
thank
you.
Thank you, Max.
All right, bye bye.
I enjoyed the evening.
Okay.
Oh, okay, so check for everyone else who's on the call. If you can hear us, sincere apologies about technical difficulties. We will probably try to do this from a different location next month. I know people have said that they want to meet in person, but it'd be a whole lot easier if we just did it all on GoToMeeting. But if people do want to still meet in person, I will still try to facilitate that and maybe find a different location, because me and Pia's feels like it's kind of in a Wi-Fi hole where the signal is very down on this side of town. So we'll maybe try a different Wi-Fi. And for the time being, I know Max had to run, but I appreciate him joining in. If anyone had any sort of follow-up, I can always relay that, and I'll pass along your film as well, Nick. So I guess we can call it good from there, unless anyone else had anything that they wanted to share.
I do.
Dave, yes, sir.
About 2 years ago, I became aware of an organization over in Brookings called the Trash Dogs. And I made an attempt to document what it is that they do. And what it is that they do is go out and clean up the abandoned cars and the junk piles, the trash piles that exist over there in Curry County. And so I set up meetings and, first emailed, phone called with one of the group principals. And we had a little conversation. It ended up being in a coffee shop on a rainy day, and the sound turned out terrible. We just didn't have the right equipment. And but we had made plans to go out to one of the cleanup sites and document this stuff. And all I really had was an iPhone and a gimbal. And so anyway, that project got abandoned, but I wanted it to be a documentary, and I thought it was a worthwhile documentary because of what it was. And so since I basically abandoned that project and haven't talked to them in about 18 months or so, I thought it might be worthwhile to approach them if people are interested in doing this as a group. So that's what I've got. I thought it could be a good documentary, and other documentaries along that line could be made like that. So I thought I'd just put that here out. And
well, this is the documentary filmmaker sitting right here, right next to you.
If anybody's interested in doing that kind of thing,
Nick,
let's go tell the car story.
A drone operator wouldn't be bad. I do plan on getting my own drone, but
I'm a commercial drone pilot.
I heard somebody here is a commercial drone pilot.
That would be me.
So I'll throw that out, and if anybody's interested, we'll talk about it.
Cool. Okay.
Is it how do you spell your last name?
P-A-O-L-A. Alpha Oscar.
India. Yes. Okay, well, I think we can call it good for the month of October, unless anyone else on the online side had anything that you'd like to say. Apologies for the tech issues on our side of things. Thank you for hanging with us on that. I just sent a thank you off to Max. I know he's exhausted. He's like I said, I knew him back in college, and then I knew him the entire time that I was in Hollywood. He was out there as well doing all of those grind jobs he was talking about of driving and working the UPS machine and all the weird random things that as an assistant you have to do in LA to get by. But it's really nice to see him in the position that he's in now, being able to do so much. So So next month, I will figure out a different locale to do this. It's going to have better Wi-Fi. But we will try to meet in person again. And as always, anyone who wants to join online, they can do so through the meeting. It's always the first Thursday of every month at 6 o'clock. And sometime soon, I will be announcing when we're going to be doing a screening of Frank and Zed. We just need to figure out a date, but the filmmaker is gung-ho on bringing that film down here. And hopefully everyone else is gung-ho on seeing it, because it's an incredible film.
Sounds good. Thank you, Kurt.
Yeah, well, one of our trophies was for Frank and Zed. And normally we would have changed that to a different film. And we would have gone down the second tier to the next highest sort of film. But those trophies took like 2 months to make. So we were going to do, yeah. So we were going back and forth in negotiations for weeks on whether or not we could actually show that film. And it came down to like the final week before the film festival when we finally got word that we could not show Frank and Zed. At that point, there was zero time to try to produce a different trophy. So I thought it best to ship Jesse's trophy anyway, because our judges picked it as our best northern feature. So regardless of whether we were able to show it or not, it was picked as our award winner. So I sent him our trophy, and he made a very nice video that we showed during the awards ceremony. And I have it on my system here as well, but again, eCam's messed up in addition to our Wi-Fi. So any of the filmmakers who couldn't attend, we sent them their trophy in advance, and they filmed a video announcing it and holding their trophy. So, but Frank and Zed probably maybe mid-November or early January was the screening of that. Cool. Okay. Dick, since this is your first meeting, is there anything else that you wanted to touch base with, networking-wise, or an opportunity to talk? Or?
Well, I don't know. It was just great to hear from Max. Oh, very curious because it's legal where we are, so it's great just to hear what he does, and we're excited to maybe do a little correspondence on him. And some other people here locally that do something.
I guess with that, we'll call it a night. Thank you everyone for joining us online, and thank you everyone for joining us in-house. We appreciate it, and we'll be back at some location to be determined the first Thursday of November. Sound good?
Good.
Thanks, everybody.
Good night.
Night.
Thank you. Bye.
Yeah.
Do you have it anywhere we can see it?